Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Fitness Education Series produced by the Australian Fitness Academy. It's like progressive overload for your brain. Today I've got Steph and Will with me. Hi Will.
Tom, Steph, how you going?
Hi,
Good
good. How are
yourself?
you?
Very good, very good.
Will is from BDO Australia, a sort of accounting and business advisor, and got him in today to talk about all things business, and he's sort of got a bit of experience in the fitness industry, business owner area. So I think we'll get straight into it. So Will, why don't you just give us a bit of a background on yourself and what you do, your interest, and I guess how it relates to us in the fitness industry as personal trainers or business owners, and we'll sort of roll the discussion from there.
Yeah, so I'm bread and butter stuff is we're an accounting and business advisory firm. But one of the things I've sort of started doing is specialising in the fitness, health, wellbeing space. I sort of came across to BDO where I'm a partner to drive a sports division, and sort of off the back of that, we've now sort of jumped into that fitness, health, wellbeing space because we just sort of feel obviously there's a lot of crossover there. But also we think it's a bit of a similar space in terms of there's probably not a lot of education at the sort of the lower level. It's sort of,
Yep.
people like looking after the big fishes, but no one sort of helps the little person, and everyone starts there. So it's probably mainly about driving the education at that starting point, and sort of hopefully from there building relationships with the industry, and sort of helping everyone through the whole journey rather than just sort of at the end.
Yeah, awesome. That's great to hear because I think it is one of the things in the fitness industry and even in the education space that we are, is that everyone's excited to get into the industry and be a personal trainer or own a gym or whatever it is, but they actually don't realize that these day and age, you don't generally get hired as a personal trainer as an employee. It's more you have to run your own business, and there's a lot to go
Yeah.
with that. So Steph's had a bit of a background in running her own business for 20 or something years, Steph, didn't you?
Yeah. So I was running my business, but I reckon you could technically say I started out just being self-employed because I was just doing my thing for myself and my clients. And then as time grew on and I realized to get bigger with my business, I needed to bring on board trainers. So therefore I had to really make all the systems and the protocols and start to really knuckle down with getting my finances organized to make sure you had that structure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome.
Absolutely.
Um,
I think it's interesting too, because I don't like I think I think there's a lot of industries that are like that. Like there's a lot of, I reckon if you ask a lot of doctors and dentists, like they'd have no idea how to run a business either, right? So it's not like
yep.
it's the only industry. I think, as to be honest, it's probably more of a school education thing that we should probably do a bit more of, to be
Yeah.
honest, overall. But yeah, definitely something that, in the end, most people, you sort of have to run a business to some degree if you're not basically employed by a big company. So totally agree.
Yeah, cool. So I guess day to day you work with a lot of not day to day, but your area is sort of fitness and health. Do you have many like people run their own like sole trader businesses, or is it more like running a gym?
Yeah, so a bit of a mix. So I have a
Yep.
couple of clients who, do some PT stuff, sort of work with other businesses around, doing content delivery and stuff like that in that fitness, health, wellbeing space.
Yeah.
But then also looking after some people that, run their gyms, whether that's one, two practices, and then probably also a few close relationships as well, just a bit of a sounding board in terms of like what the industry's doing, what do we think, where do we think the industry's going, and even to the point of people like high net wealth individuals who want to invest in this space, like what should they
Yeah.
be
Okay.
looking for? That might part of their portfolio might be two or three gyms or some sports tech stuff or something like that as well. So a bit of a mixed bag.
Yeah, awesome. I think we'll just keep rolling through some different ideas or topics that we sort of thought would be interesting. But let's go jump to like contractors, subcontractors, employees in the fitness space. I know, Steph, when you ran your business, sole trader for a little bit, but then you brought other people on board as employees or contractors.
As, and this is where, and Tom, we were talking about this, the fitness industry, it seems to be very grey areas where there shouldn't be grey areas. My understanding is that if you're providing someone with your uniform and the equipment, then they are an employee. But the fitness industry is sort of bit grey on that. And some of our, like for example, if someone goes to work in a big box gym, they're provided their uniform, but they're paying rent to use the equipment. Therefore, they're kind of running their own business in a facility, and therefore they're not a contractor, or they are a contractor. I don't know. Like, we wanted you to clarify that for our students.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is it is a grey area. So every situation potentially is going to be a little bit different. Now, there has been just a recent High Court decision, which was the CFMEU versus personal contracting, I think it was. That was operations versus JAMSEC. So, and look, don't necessarily want your clients to go on unless they want to, unless they're struggling to sleep at the moment. Maybe going and reading that case might be a good thing. But I think the most important thing is, yeah, every situation is going to be different. So there's not going to be a cookie cutter approach to everything. And I think that's where people run into a lot of issues. It's sort of like the barbecue talk or the pub talk where you go, oh, we've done it this way. And so like people go off and do that. And the situation might be slightly different, and that's where people get into trouble and get caught. So I think that's probably the biggest thing is if you are really unsure, sometimes it might be really clear cut, but if it's not clear cut, then I definitely go get some help. As a bit of a general rule, and I tend to think about it, if the more that there's control by the person that's paying you the money, the more likely that you're going to be pushing towards an employee. So that's probably where you sort of look at it. So the ATO does have a couple of tools as well. Like you go on the ATO website and sort of put your circumstances in and do all that. And there's still some, things around that. There are also instances where you might be a contractor, but there's still obligations for superannuation to be paid as well. So that's where it gets even a little bit extra grey. So I think that's where probably structuring is really important because that can impact whether super's paid or not. So that's a really important point. So, as an example, if you're a PT and you're running your business through a company, and you're classified as a contractor, they don't have to. They're not obligated to pay super to you. So there's just things like that that can be that you probably just need to think about. But as I again said, I think it's the control thing that you need to think about. I used to work with a lot of rural farmers, and the best example I can give that sort of looks at both ends of the scale is basically if you're a farmhand and you get asked to rock up at 8 o'clock in the morning, you'll work till 5, but we don't know what we're going out to do today. It's just sort of you rock up, we're going out to do it. You're going to most likely be that employee type person versus, hey, we need a fence built from A to B. You just go and do it. It might be from 8 till 5, but you just go and do the fence and then we'll pay you for doing the fence. You're going to be more likely a contractor. So that's probably like as an example. I don't know that there's the thing is there's so many of those examples that are sort of a bit of both in between, bit of broad, but that's probably the way to look at it, probably from a high level perspective.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good example. In terms of, I guess, setting yourself up as a fitness business, as a personal trainer, what was, I guess, your top tips, or what things do you see a lot that people don't think about off the bat?
Yeah, again, it probably does come a little bit down to personal circumstances. I think that the one thing I always talk about with structuring that you need to consider is like the things we need to consider is one, risk. So if you're running a PT business through your personal name, all your personal assets basically become, if you were to be sued, you effectively are exposing everything within your personal name. So that's one big thing to think about is risk. The next thing is exit strategy. So, and not that you're going to be selling because you're the one running the business as a PT. So it's not probably as important, but if you built up a really strong name, if there's a profile that comes with it, something like that, and all of a sudden your business is potentially worth a lot of money, having it in your personal name then just means you're probably going to get taxed a lot more because you don't have the flexibility to do it, to sell it off or something like that. So that's probably something else like your exit strategy. And then the other thing is just tax minimization. So, and look, I definitely don't always recommend just doing things to like, we obviously all don't like paying tax, but at the same time, if you're paying tax, it probably means you're making money. So that's probably a good thing. And that's probably a mindset we sort of all have to get into sometimes. But I think the biggest thing with that is just that's at least do what we can do to make sure we minimize it as much as possible. So, do we run it through a trust? Do we run it through a company, or do we keep it in our personal name? That's probably the 3 factors that I tend to look at generically before we dive into it.
And so those decisions are big decisions, especially if we've got some new students who literally just almost finished their course and they want to go out and do their own business. So could they potentially start their own business, as in just kind of what I said before, being self-employed? And then if they think, no, this is really what I want to do, then they can make those decisions to structure and set up with either a company or a trust.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of looking at it, is sort of going, I'm dabbling in this. I'm just going to do bits and pieces. This is where I think I'll go. And then it's like, no, I'm fully committing to this industry. This is where I want to go. That potentially is at the point, yeah, where right, let's put this business into a company. At least I know I'm safe in terms of risk, no other assets. It can, as again, it can sometimes come down to how much income you're earning. So as a rough guide, if your net taxable income is about 100, it's about 125 now, but about 125K on average, the individual tax rate is about the same as the company rate at around about that level.
Yep.
So yes, there's a bit of a stagger within your personal name versus a company is sort of like 25 cents from $1. There is a stagger, but on average, it works out at about 25 cents to the dollar at about 125K earnings. So sometimes I use that as a ballpark. Like once you get to that level, maybe that's a good time. Some people I say once you have to be registered for GST and you have to run everything through that, maybe that's a good time. So once you hit that 80 or 75K threshold, maybe that's a good time to just step into a company because you've got to register for GST and there's just some other things. And then there's a transfer cost as well. So if you move from individual and then all of a sudden have to move to a company, there can be a transfer cost. So maybe that's a good, yeah. And again, it totally depends on the individual, what they feel is the right time from that perspective.
Yeah, but that's good to reiterate to anyone listening that if they want to start their own business, they don't have to straight away go and do a trust. Like, as you said, just get your feet, start to earn some income, build it up, and then make that step.
And then make a step. But again, it probably just always rechecking in with those three sort of main things as you're going along that, just sort of re-looking at those questions basically.
Yeah, that's good.
Yep. So starting as a sole trader, you think, Will, is a good option for most PTs in the current landscape of being a PT?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, I mean, again, it probably depends what people's risk appetite is. Like if you've got a lot of personal assets to lose, then maybe starting in a company straight away might be a really good thing because you don't want to lose everything. And obviously we're playing devil's advocate here that something does go wrong as part of your business. But I think at a very low level, if you're, a young person that's just come out of university or cert training or whatever it may be, it probably makes the most common sense because it's quick and easy to do. You don't have any setup costs, like anyone can go and organize an ABN on their own account and then basically just getting a bank account and away you go. So yeah, definitely the setup cost is a lot cheaper. That's the benefit. So definitely, that's why it would most likely be the case for most people when they get in. That's why they would go that way.
Yeah, makes sense.
Where would you sort of recommend personal trainers go for this education? Like we give them bits and pieces of business knowledge, but it's not anything a lot in terms of how they manage their finances and different types of companies and things. Like BDO and financial advisors like yourself are good options, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's just having a trusted accountant and an advisor. And look, there's bucket loads out there, and I think the biggest thing is it's like everything. You need to probably have a chat to the person that's you as your accountant, try to make sure you're on the same wavelength, same values as them. And then obviously you got to get in a right price point as well. So, there's obviously the higher up you go in terms of how big the organization is, it's going to cost more, but they cost more because it's probably making you sleep at night a little bit better. So that's probably the sort of things you need to think of. And obviously there's industry specialization stuff as well. So, if they understand the industry, you can get some added value from there as well.
Yep.
I went through 4 different accountants in my time of 23 years. So if you are with someone that doesn't seem to be giving you either the rapport you need or the support you need, the first one was they just didn't quite understand how a fitness business worked. So I think students should also know that it's okay to change.
Yeah, and that the organization can change a bit too. Like accountants, partners move on and retire, and so someone else comes in and they might be, work with you a little bit differently. there's some really good accounting firms out there. So, and the people that know industry. So absolutely, there's definitely something to look at and keep on, just like, any other provider that would be giving you information that you're relying on.
Awesome. Any last minute tips you think, Will, on someone just entering the industry and going, okay, I'm just signing a contract to work as a PT for Good Life. Is there anything I should be taking care of before I get started?
So from a business perspective, as I said, making sure you got, everything from like your ABNs, make sure you got your TFM, make sure you got
Yeah.
all that set up, make sure that stuff is good. I think record keeping is really important and not something that you
Yeah.
do after the fact. I think just put some investment, get a zero file, run it through a zero file or MyOb or whichever one you want to do.
Excel's
There's a
not going
really
to cut
good,
it, you don't think, Will?
not Excel as well. It's going to cost you a lot of money on my end if you give me an Excel file. I'll give you a hot tip.
Yeah.
The other one, there's a really good company out there at the moment as well called Henry, and they specifically work with sole traders. So they lodge your BASs, they lodge your tax returns. They have some really cool apps within their system. So if you're in that sole trader space, they only look after sole traders, so they don't do companies trust, that sort of thing. But if it's just a bit of an entry thing, it's a really cool tool to use.
Awesome.
And there's a lot of help stuff on there. But then also they do a lot of the stuff for you. So you don't immerse yourself in it. Whereas Zero, you sort of have to do it a little bit. And I sometimes think that potentially could be a better learning outcome. But I think just to initially get in there and understand that, well, at least I know it's working for me, Henry might be a really good choice. But again, it probably depends on the individual, how much they want to dive into it. I know Zero has so much help center stuff. You don't need to pay someone to teach you how to do it. You can literally go through, you can get certified within their system, but going through the various trainings. So, but I think, yeah, record keeping, getting a separate bank account, don't mix it with business and private. Yeah, that can be really, really helpful. I mean, even from a credit card perspective, if you're doing a bit of travel, go get a separate credit card that goes directly to your business account, right? And then keep a private one, keep a business one, and use them separately. Otherwise record keeping can be a nightmare. So I think getting onto that sooner rather than later is a really good thing. And the other thing is, and this is probably more your area, but I just think you've got to immerse yourself in it a bit. Like you've got to run down some rabbit holes. You've got to, go on LinkedIn, follow some leaders of the industry, listen to podcasts like this great one,
Exactly.
and then and sort of really immerse yourself in it, because that's where you will learn. You get a lot of learnings. As I said, you do go down the odd rabbit hole, but then there'd be a lot of stuff that you do get some really good payback for putting in the time. So that's probably the few big things that I'd recommend.
No, perfect. I think it gives them a good place to start because I think throughout the course they immerse themselves in learning how to teach fitness and be a personal trainer, and they get to the end and they're like, oh, now I've got to learn how to start a business or manage my cash flow and all this sort of stuff. And it is another rabbit hole, but I think it's some sort of experience. It's a thing that you will gain with experience, but those little tidbits on sort of what to think about is good because a lot of the time they don't know where to start. I think you had 8 bank accounts at one point, did you, Steph?
Yeah, I was, it was a nightmare, but it kept everything allocated separately. So I had one for my GST, one for my PAYG, one to pay my trainers, one for superannuation, one for the spendings. Like it was like 8 accounts going on there, but all the money had an allocated area. So I never got caught out when I had to pay tax or when I got caught out when I had to pay my BAS. It was always there, ready to go. Whereas I know some of my peers who ran their own businesses, PT as well, would get the bill and go, oh my God, I need to pay $5,000. I haven't got $5,000. And you're constantly playing catch up then. So instead of spending the money immediately, put it in its allocated place right from the beginning. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, appreciate your time. We'd be happy for our students and listeners to get in touch with you via email or something if possible.
Yeah,
if they have any
absolutely. Feel
questions.
free. Yeah, absolutely. If anyone wants to reach out, feel free. Feel free to pass on contact details or you can find me on the BDO website as well or on LinkedIn. So happy for people to reach out.
No, awesome. Appreciate it, Will, and thanks for jumping in.
No problems.
Thank you.